Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of your sources, pull out the core knowledge, and really give you that shortcut to being well-informed. So today, we're diving into an incredibly thorough resource. It's a handbook for vocational education and training professionals, VET for short. And this material, which was co-funded by the EU, is all about one very specific, very complex challenge: how to successfully prepare refugee women for sustainable careers in the hospitality sector, which is, a pretty high-pressure and culturally diverse environment.
It really is.
Our mission here is to understand why this training is so much more than just, teaching someone how to clean a room or chop some vegetables. This deep dive is about the sophisticated, tailored approach you need to build a real foundation. We're talking human connection, cultural fluency, and maybe most critically, emotional resilience.
That's the core insight of this whole guide. Hospitality at its heart is about connection and resilience. And these are qualities that, frankly, many refugee women possess just because of their life experiences. But, and this is the key, you have these unique hurdles. Things like unprocessed trauma, the need for rapid cultural integration, unfamiliar professional rules. It all means trainers just can't use a standard one-size-fits-all approach.
So success really hinges on it being a trauma-informed system.
Exactly. And the guide gets very practical. It targets 4 key entry-level roles for, immediate employment.
Okay.
We're looking at housekeeping, kitchen assistants, front desk operation, and stock management assistant. And each of those has its own unique psychosocial demands.
All right, so let's unpack that right away. The foundation seems to be interpersonal skills. Module 1 really hammers this home. And it's not about just general politeness, is it? It's about functional communication in these, like you said, high-pressure, multicultural settings.
Precisely. The handbook breaks down 4 types of functional communication that are just essential for safety and for speed. First, you have to be able to follow instructions clearly. Think about a kitchen assistant. If you misunderstand a recipe, say the difference between a tablespoon and a teaspoon, or finely chop versus dice.
Oh, that could be a disaster.
Yeah, it could be. It can lead to food waste, safety issues, just chaos in a busy kitchen. The stakes are actually quite high.
And then there's the next one, concise and direct communication. This one really struck me. We think of hospitality as being all about warmth, but these sources seem to prioritize efficiency over pleasantries, at least at first.
They have to. You need a stock manager to just report, delivery received, missing 2 boxes of towels. Boom, done.
Or the front desk saying, breakfast is served 7 to 10 a.m. No ambiguity.
And that directness is prioritized because in a high-pressure, high-risk situation, ambiguity costs you time and money. So if you have an emergency, like a water leak, the report has to be urgent and totally unmistakable.
Water leak in room 204, urgent maintenance needed.
Exactly. Trainers have to explicitly teach that this isn't rude, it's just professional efficiency.
The document also makes it clear that communication is a two-way street, which brings us to active listening. And they break down what that actually means in practice. It's things like immediate clarification and questioning.
Right. It's the kitchen assistant who confirms, do you mean finely chopped or diced onions, before they start cutting?
That one little question prevents a potentially big error down the line.
And it's also about reading the room, reading nonverbal cues. A stock manager needs to be able to look at a supervisor, see their hurried gestures or stressed tone, and understand the urgency of a request without needing a long explanation.
Just from body language.
Just from body language. And this then connects directly to cultural sensitivity as a professional skill. Trainers have to model gender-sensitive communication right away, using neutral terms like colleagues or team, because, stereotypes might be embedded in the home cultures of the participants.
So the professional setting has to be totally neutral.
Strictly neutral and respectful.
And the nonverbal cues across cultures. I mean, that's fascinating, especially for anyone in a guest-facing role. Let's talk about eye contact.
A huge one.
In, say, a German or American setting, we're told direct eye contact signal honesty, right?
Yeah.
Attentiveness.
But the handbook points out that in other cultures, like Japanese or many African contexts, sustained eye contact can be seen as disrespectful, even confrontational.
Wow. Just imagine the confusion that could cause at a check-in desk.
And it's not just your eyes, it's proximity, how close you stand to someone.
Sure.
Mediterranean cultures might be more comfortable with closer interactions, showing friendliness. But in Northern European or East Asian contexts, people often prefer more physical distance.
That seems like a really heavy burden on the staff to have to interpret every single guest's cultural preference. I mean, doesn't that risk a kind of paralysis by analysis?
It absolutely could, which is why the training focuses more on a solution-oriented response rather than a deep cultural analysis in the moment.
So once you've addressed those barriers, the next step is managing the inevitable conflicts.
Exactly. When conflict does happen, the guide pushes for these short, clear de-escalation scripts. The goal is to move the trainee away from being defensive and towards this clear, non-blaming language.
And the examples they give are so powerful because they're so simple. So instead of arguing with a guest about towels, the response is just, "I'm sorry for that. I'll bring fresh towels right away."
It takes the personal fault out of it. Or the stock manager who finds a problem, they immediately suggest working together.
Let's check the list again together. Maybe something is still in the truck.
It's all about the resolution, not the blame.
I was really struck by how deeply this guide integrates mental health. Module 2 treats it not as some HR issue, but as a core competency for the trainers themselves. So why the heavy emphasis here? This suggests they're dealing with a population with very specific needs.
The need is profound. Clinical data shows that the level of severe psychological distress in this demographic is alarmingly high. It's a major barrier to keeping a job. I mean, meta-analyses show that between 30 and 40% of refugees show symptoms of PTSD, and 40 to 50% suffer from anxiety or depression.
That's staggering.
It is, and for women, the vulnerability is often even higher. This isn't just everyday stress. This is clinical severity that affects concentration, social interaction, everything.
And trainers have to know that so they don't misinterpret trauma symptoms as, what, apathy or lack of motivation?
Exactly. And it's all complicated by these significant cultural barriers to getting help. In some cultures, psychological problems are deeply stigmatized. They might be associated with spiritual weakness or something like that.
Which makes it really difficult to seek formal help.
Extremely. So the VET environment becomes one of the few places where support can be safely offered.
And you add migratory mourning on top of that.
Yes, and that isn't just sadness. It's this complex, painful grief over losing everything, your home, your social ties, and especially your status. The guide quotes a participant, a woman who is a teacher in her home country. She says, "Here I am, nobody. In my country, I was a teacher. Here they look at me as if I don't know how to do anything."
That sudden loss of identity, that's a massive psychological hurdle.
Huge. And VET trainers have to acknowledge it.
So the trainer's role is not to be a therapist. The guide is very clear about that.
Not at all.
But they do have to provide trauma-informed support. So active listening, emotional validation.
Just recognizing that someone's feelings make sense given what they've been through, and practicing cultural humility, asking respectful questions instead of just assuming you know.
And the big takeaway here, backed up by data, is the huge influence of the corporate culture on all of this.
Immense. An unfavorable environment doesn't just make someone unhappy. It can actively make pre-existing psychological distress worse.
And we see this in the real-world examples they give.
We do. There's the Iraqi receptionist in Germany who is constantly mocked for her accent until she just quit.
Or the Eritrean woman in Austria. She was assigned cleaning duties for 3 weeks with no human contact, no check-ins. She said she felt completely invisible.
That experience of invisibility, it's devastating for anyone, but especially for someone already dealing with trauma.
But on the flip side, favorable environments use what the guide calls empathetic leadership.
Yes. And look at the example from the Spanish cooperative. The participant there said that her colleagues and supervisors asked how I was every morning, not just whether I had done the tasks.
That's such a small thing, but it changes everything.
It transforms the experience from transactional labor into a human interaction. In Greece, a hotel implemented a co-reception program so new staff could share tasks, which reduced the fear of making a mistake.
And the numbers prove this isn't just a feel-good thing, it's a business imperative.
It is. In that program in Greece, the one with flexible breaks and monthly emotional well-being check-ins, absenteeism dropped by 40%.
40%. When you think about the cost of turnover and retraining, that makes psychosocial support a core part of the bottom line.
Which brings us right to trauma-informed teaching methods. These are non-negotiable. Trainers have to create physical and emotional safety. That means no shouting, no public shaming for mistakes, which can trigger deep feelings of vulnerability.
And maintaining consistency, right?
Right. Trust and transparency. Always displaying the schedule, anticipating changes. The learning environment has to feel stable and predictable.
And the second principle is preventing re-traumatization.
The most critical one. You have to review VET content for triggers, avoid forcing people to share personal stories, and make sure the training doesn't simulate past experiences of, control or violence.
So the environment has to be a safe contrast to past instability.
Exactly. Now, moving from that emotional safety net, the manual gets into some very practical tools for self-management.
Which is crucial because, as you said, those 4 job roles have really specific, intense stressors.
They do. The front desk operator is dealing with constant customer interaction, conflict. The kitchen assistant has physical stressors, heat, noise, speed.
And the housekeeping you mentioned is uniquely problematic.
It is. It combines physical isolation with repetitive tasks in closed rooms. And that can unintentionally reactivate past traumas because the person is alone and vulnerable.
So to counter that chronic stress, that hypervigilance that's a leftover from trauma, the handbook suggests quick, discrete stress reduction techniques.
Right, things you can actually do in a busy workplace.
Like conscious abdominal breathing. They mentioned the 4-7-8 technique. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8.
And a front desk operator can do that for just 60 seconds after a tough phone call. Or a stock manager can do it walking between storerooms. It just instantly calms the nervous system.
They also recommend sensory awareness techniques for grounding during, say, an anxiety or overload crisis.
It's that simple exercise of naming things. 5 things you see, 4 you hear, 3 you touch.
It forces your mind out of that anxiety loop and back into the present moment.
A total mental reset.
And given the dual load, these women are often carrying work demands, plus intense family responsibilities. Time management isn't just a nice skill to have.
No, it's a necessity. It's about reducing that feeling of being overwhelmed. It creates a sense of autonomy.
So the guide suggests teaching tools like the simplified Eisenhower matrix, urgent versus important.
Or the 25-minute block technique. Anything that helps trainees prioritize what has to be done now versus what can wait. It really builds confidence.
Module 3 then builds on this by focusing on cognitive skill development. This is moving beyond just following instructions.
Yes, this is about cultivating critical thinking and problem solving. This is what's required for upward mobility.
It's about training staff to analyze the situation objectively and make a reasoned judgment in real time.
So for a front desk operator, that's managing overbooked rooms not by panicking, but by efficiently finding the best alternative for the guest.
Or for a stock manager, it's about finding the root cause of a missing item, not just reporting that it's gone.
Exactly. And finally, fostering adaptability. They recommend unexpected change drills.
I like that idea. Simulated moments where you have to shift plans quickly. A sudden rush of check-ins or a fire alarm.
Yeah, things that force you to pivot smoothly under pressure. That's a learned skill. And the whole thing concludes with a focus on empowerment and belonging.
Which is so vital. It shifts the women from being passive trainees to being valued, contributing experts in their own right.
And they use simple but powerful methods like cross-recognition cards. Colleagues write positive notes to each other, builds team cohesion.
I really love the idea of the knowledge-sharing activities, though, allowing the women to teach the group something from their own culture.
A recipe, a song, a custom.
It transforms them from just a learner into an expert. It integrates their past identity into their new professional one.
Well, this deep dive really confirms it. Job readiness for vulnerable populations is this complex, three-dimensional challenge. You need the technical skill, yes.
But success is just as dependent on emotional safety and cultural fluency.
And the case study of Amina in Berlin just summarizes this whole approach perfectly.
Right. She was competent, punctual, but she avoided eye contact in public speaking. Classic trauma expressions.
And her VET team didn't see that as apathy or disinterest. Instead, they used this respectful, flexible approach. They didn't force her to speak or make eye contact.
They gave her multiple ways to participate.
That approach respected her silence as an expression of trauma, not a choice. And it ultimately led to her empowerment because she felt seen and she felt safe.
It just shows that in this industry, an emotional crisis protocol and consistent psychosocial support, they aren't optional add-ons.
They're critical professional components of occupational health and of training success.
So what does this all mean for you? We saw that creating a respectful environment where workers feel safe and acknowledged can reduce absenteeism by as much as 40%. That's a massive cost saving for any organization. So the question is, what fundamental, trauma-informed cultural shifts could your own professional environment make right now, even without a migration context, to foster a sustainable and a truly high-performing team?
How much are you losing by not actively ensuring your staff feel seen and emotionally validated?
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more critical context, quickly delivered.